Hello and welcome to episode 2 of 2022. Today I am joined by Lisa and Joe, and we are going to be talking about LGBTQ because it is LGBTQ plus History Month. So hi Joe, hi Lisa.
Hi Lou.
Hi Louise.
Was there any need for the Louise? Okay. So yeah, I guess first and foremost, we should probably talk about how we all identify. So, Joe, how do you identify?
Thanks for the question. It was really interesting. I identify as a gay man.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and I identify as a gay woman.
Okay, and I guess I'll go as well. I identify as a straight woman. So we've got a bit of a mix today. But yeah, I wanted to get Joe and Lisa on, and they've kindly volunteered themselves to come on and have a chat and kind of share their experiences. And we've also caught up with some LBG... Oh no!
That's a new one.
I know. LGBTQ plus young people, and they have given their thoughts and their experiences on how they kind of find things. So, as we are a drug and alcohol service and we cover Gwent, I think one of the most important things we need to have a chat about first is how drug use, alcohol use affects the LGBTQ community. So, Joe, over to you.
Yes, it's a really interesting area, Lou, and it's one that's been looked at for the last couple of decades. I used to work in a charity that looked at the needs of gay and bisexual men, or men who had sex with men. And they used to do kind of annual surveys looking at sexual health needs, relationship issues, and zooming in on drug and alcohol stuff. Since those days, those kind of surveys have been broadening to encompass all of the LGBTQ spectrum of people. In the surveys that have been recently done, the kind of same kind of information has been coming through in that LGBTQ plus people are more likely to drink alcohol, are more likely to smoke cigarettes, are more likely to kind of take drugs as well on top of that. So if you're looking at, in terms of population, there's around 10% of the population that identifies as LGBTQ plus. That's access to services. Only 3% of people that access services on a UK-wide level identify as LGBTQ plus. So there's a kind of a disparity, a mismatch in terms of how many people are actually using drugs, including alcohol, that identify as LGBTQ plus, and how many people actually access services. So there's a massive gap in provision somewhere. Over the lockdown, as we've seen in all of the communities across the UK, there's been an increase in alcohol use and an increase in drug use. And the LGBTQ community has had exactly the same kind of phenomenon happen. So there's been an increase in drug use and there's been an increase in alcohol use across the communities in the UK. There's also been an increase in things like domestic violence within LGBTQ plus relationships. There's been an increase in LGBTQ phobia. So that means that there's been more attacks, more abuse to LGBTQ plus people. And it's also meant that LGBTQ plus people have been forced back into possibly LGBTQ phobic families and have to conceal their identity and possibly go back into the closet. For a lot of LGBTQ plus people, they are the only way that they can access, the community is by going to venues, where they're able to kind of socialise. And as a result of lockdown, many of these places closed down overnight. So that cut off a large part of their opportunities to socialise. So it's been quite varied, in terms of the impact. Everyone was impacted by the pandemic. LGBTQ plus people specifically were impacted in a number of different ways. Drug and alcohol use went up, domestic violence went up, phobia to this particular community went up, and abuse and violent attacks also went up. And we've seen quite a lot of that across South Wales recently as well.
Within Gwent N-gage, we've identified that this that the community are under, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't come into service, they don't come in for that support. So we've identified that within Gwent N-gage, and we've got workers that are now working with the LGBTQ plus community within schools, and we've caught up with them and had their kind of take on how they find things. So we'll have a discussion about that in a little bit.
That's a really good point, Luke, because we've been working quite hard to engage with communities that we haven't been able to engage with as well, historically. Part of my role within Gwent N-gage is to coordinate the outward-facing parts of the service. So engagement is one of those parts of the service that I'm responsible for. And the engagement team have been tasked with looking to engage with LGBTQ plus young people across Gwent to make sure that they have access to information and support, as well as, you know, everything else that we provide through our service, to ensure that they have access to absolutely everything that anyone else could access across the Gwent area. Some of the workers have been engaging in school environments with LGBTQ groups that have been established within education, and other workers have been working within the community, so reaching out to community groups where young people socialise with other LGBTQ plus people outside of education, to engage and ensure that they have access to information, and also understand that they can get support if they need it.
Yeah, I think that's a massive point as well that you've just made, Joe, in terms of being able to have that support within education, because part of LGBTQ plus History Month is recognising the way things have changed throughout history. And one of those changes was the clause that was removed to allow it to be spoken about in schools, because it wasn't allowed. There was kind of a law put in place where schools weren't allowed to talk about the LGBTQ plus community, whereas now it's very much talked about. So that's a massive kind of move forward in terms of the history that goes with it. So yeah.
I think as well, Lou, you know, what's really great is that within schools, I know Gwent N-gage have been been involved in like the Pride months that we see during the summer, and going into schools and supporting those Pride events. And I know also we've been involved in the Pride event that Monmouthshire of the Monmouthshire Youth Service, I believe, that have organised, and we kind of went to spent a wonderful couple of days in Caldecott Castle, and it was just so lovely kind of seeing a young person friendly event, you know, because obviously you go to, you know, the organised Pride events in the different cities, but it's kind of for every age. But it was lovely seeing a youth friendly Pride event where you had young people, you know, identifying and kind of coming out with different talents as well. And part of that was we had a couple of young people from Gwent N-gage that showcased their talents, and it was a really proud kind of moment to be involved in. But yeah, just seeing more events being run by local authorities and with schools as well is just wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. So Lisa, you've brought me quite nicely on to Pride, and let's talk about the flag, because the flag is very, very interesting.
Yeah, so as Lou knows, I love a bit of history, and not come across it, but it was kind of flagged up. See the pun there?
Oh, I like it.
Thank you. To my attention, because I was watching a channel called Smithsonian, yeah, and they kind of do history, and one of it was about the Pride flag. So yeah, I've just got I guess a little bit of history on that if anybody's interested, really. But the Pride flag was devised by an artist called Gilbert Baker. And the design basically has undergone several versions since its debut in 1978. But what happened was basically a guy called Harvey Bernard Milk. He was an American politician, and actually the first openly gay man to be elected into public office in California. And And what happened was that Milk had gone to Baker and said, look, let's kind of devise a symbol for our gay community here in California. So Harvey Milk, he moved to San Francisco in 1972 and initially opened a camera store. But what he did, he settled in a neighborhood called the Castro neighborhood, where that neighborhood was experiencing mass immigration of gay men and lesbians. And this really compelled him to run for city supervisor in 1973. I mean, of course, in that day and age, he's going to encounter resistance, and he did, from existing kind of, the existing political establishment. But actually, his popularity kept growing, and I guess his drive, he dubbed himself the mayor of Castro Street. And they said his campaign was really theatrical because he was quite brash, he was outspoken, he was animated and outrageous, and this basically earned him media attention and votes. And in the end, it was enough to see him elected finally in 1977. But unfortunately, there's a little bit of a sad turn to this, because on November 27th, 1978, Harvey Bernard Milk was assassinated. So alongside the mayor, George Moscone, I think that's how you pronounce his name, George Moscone and Harvey Milk were shot dead and killed in San Francisco City Hall by a former supervisor, Dan White. So basically, White was angry that the mayor had refused to reappoint his seat, and basically took it out on them both and killed them both. Shot them both dead. So in light of this, the pride flag was celebrated and kind of had a bit of a rebirth. And so originally there were 8 colours on the gay flag, but they took away turquoise and hot pink because these colours were quite hard to get hold of. But as the flag as we see it now, that was artistically produced by Gilbert Baker, we've got the 6 colours. So we've got so it follows the actual colours of the rainbow. So red represents life, orange represents healing, yellow represents sunlight, green represents nature, blue represents serenity, and violet represents spirit. And I think they're so wonderful. And I think hot pink represented sex, but like I said, because of the availability. So kind of bittersweet story, really, but lovely that it was reborn because, in celebration of Harvey Milk and all the great work that he did in that borough of San Francisco, even though he was kind of in post for such a short time. So, yeah.
Lisa, it's a really interesting film if any of our listeners are kind of film watchers. There was a film made in 2008 on Harvey Milk's life, starring Sean Penn, and it just follows his struggles as an American gay activist, how he fought for gay rights to become California's first openly gay elected official. It's called Milk. The starring role is done by Sean Penn. Have a look at it if you get 5 minutes. It's brilliant.
I'm going to watch it. I did not know that film existed. And like I said, I saw it on Smithsonian and obviously from then on got really interested in Harvey Milk's kind of, campaigns or etc. But like I said, you can imagine in those times, in the 70s, 60s, it was it wasn't easy to kind of get those messages out there, was it, in terms of, and still isn't today,
Absolutely.
so to speak. So, but yeah, like Joe said, for all you listeners that are interested in that, and yeah, I bet it's a really excellent kind of film to watch.
It's fantastic, and it's kind of, it lends itself nicely to kind of the focus of LGBT History Month as well, which has been set up, for a whole range of reasons to kind of like celebrate LGBTQ plus kind of communities, increase visibility of LGBTQ plus people, do not just celebrate their history, but also their experiences. Ensure that the curriculum in education reflects the needs of LGBTQ plus people. And ensure that the welfare of LGBTQ plus people is kept high on the agenda of people making decisions, right across the UK, or right across the globe, in fact. So the milk story and the Harvey Milk story, and the Pride flag, are all part of this kind of promotion around equality and diversity in relation to LGBTQ plus people. So absolutely, there's lots of things that we can do, like Harvey Milk did, but maybe not as active, but even the smallest things help.
Yeah, and also, when you're flying that flag, it's about what it represents, isn't it? It's not just a pretty flag that looks great. And we do know that it represents pride or wherever, but it's nice to know kind of what those colours represent as well. Because when, I think about them, I get this really warm feeling about everything. It encompasses a lot of things, doesn't it? For the different communities. So, yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's very, very interesting, especially knowing where it stems from and what all the colours mean and things. So yeah, it's really good, and I'll be watching that film as well.
Yeah, me too.
Watches, brilliant.
I just wanted to kind of have mention as well that we caught up last week to have a bit of a planning session for this podcast, and I got talking to Joe and Lisa about kind of things that go on for them. And one thing, I mentioned this to Lisa earlier this week, I haven't seen Joe yet, but one thing that really kind of stood out for me was that you were saying you're with me now, you were talking about how that homophobic hate and things, and being fearful of like walking down the street if you want to hold hands with your partner, that you don't necessarily do that because you're fearful of the hate that might come towards you for doing that. And I hadn't really thought about that until I spoke to you both last week, and it's really kind of like stuck with me, because if I wanted to hold my husband's hand, I don't think twice about it, and you shouldn't think twice about it either. We shouldn't be living in a society or anything like that where you can't hold the person who you love's hand. Like, it just completely blows my mind. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of highlight that because it's something that's really, really stuck with me from speaking to you both last week, and I hadn't thought about it, and that's my ignorance, really. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point, really.
I think as well, and thanks for bringing that back up, Lou, and I think this stemmed from a vigil that I attended for Dr. Gary Jenkins that sadly was killed in Butte Park. So Dr. Gary Jenkins, a gay man, was killed by 3 youths, and I attended the vigil in outside the museum, outside City Hall. And it was bittersweet. I think I was talking to you last week, that we came together, not just as the LGBTQ plus community, but everybody else was there. We had the vicar from St. John's, which is the kind of, that's her catchment area around there. The Bishop of Llandaff sent their kind of condolences to the family. And it just kind of hit home that sadly we're still in times where, of course we have the freedom, because there are countries that even if we showed an ounce of affection, we'd probably get stoned or kind of, worse for showing those affections. But standing in my hometown in Cardiff, it just hit home that for an era that we feel like we've come so far, and then something like that takes us back to rethink that, sometimes we might not feel safe, and that's okay. And it's not about, it's individual for everybody. Somebody might listen to this podcast and think, well, you should feel proud, and you should feel okay to hold your partner's hand, regardless of how you identify. And I absolutely understand that. But I think personal experiences of kind of, it just makes you second guess about how you are in public. And that really hit home when I stood there at the vigil. And I don't know whether Dr. Gary Jenkins was with a partner. I don't know the details. I don't know why he was killed, but why they decided to kill him, I'm not sure. I don't know those details. But, it was just something I think we had a conversation with, and that's, it hit home to me about safety, and it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll have to second Lisa's, kind of comments around not feeling safe on the streets. Even though we've had so much change in terms of legislation and increase in rights for LGBTQ plus people, and sometimes that's reflected quite clearly in things like education, where you've got this LGBTQ plus agenda high on people's, kind of priority lists. The flip side of that is that on the streets, there's still lots of homophobia. There's still lots of resentment and ill feeling towards LGBTQ plus people. And unfortunately, that kind of leads to violent attack, like the one that happened in Cardiff, Lisa was talking about. And also, that's not just an isolated attack, because these happen frequently across all parts of the UK, not just South Wales. So there's no kind of, shock when people say that they are fearful of displaying affection towards their partner in public, because the repercussion is that they might get abuse at best, or even violent attack at worst, possibly, fatal attack. Who knows? But there's still a real threat to LGBTQ plus people in social situations if they are affectionate towards the people that they care about.
Definitely, and again, on the flip side of that, I'm not going to mention the school, obviously, but it's a school in Gwent, and before lockdown was kind of involved in an initiative around bullying in schools, and there was a cohort of young people from year 7 right up to year 13 that were ambassadors for the school in terms of bullying. And one young person identified as non-binary, so they were male assigned but would come in and wear a skirt, and I thought that was so brave of them to do in a school, like walk into a school and do that. So on the flip side, there's these wonderful examples of people kind of putting themselves out there and just doing what they believe in, and kind of, it is still fearful and it is still scary, but I think that we still need to encourage people to be brave and to kind of, it's like you said, Joe, to feel safe, but to kind of be us, be
celebrate who we are.
Celebrate who we are.
It's a difference, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just kind of leading on to that with the schools and things, so we caught up with a group of young people who are within the LGBTQ plus community, and they are currently in year 10, so we got a bit of feedback from them of how they kind of find things, and one of the very interesting points they made was their group in year 10 is relatively small, but there's also an LGBTQ plus group in year 7, which is a lot bigger. So it looks and it appears that in that short space of 3 years, it's definitely the young people have commented that the young people in year 7 feel more comfortable, more safe, secure to come out and be themselves, and the fact that group is massive compared to the year 10 group, I think, speaks volumes. So that was one thing they kind of pointed out to us, and saying that it does appear that young people are feeling more confident and safe in order to come out and be who they are. And just kind of echoing, like, I've got younger children again in primary school, and we see gay couples walking down the street. They might have the bravery to hold hands or show affection, and my children don't bat an eyelid. It is something that is completely normal to them, as it should be, and the education around that is starting earlier in schools. So I like to think that in a few years' time, we'll have a completely different kind of community and outlook, and hopefully we would have made some progress, and gay people, LGBTQ plus people, the whole community do feel safe being who they are, because not any different to anybody else.
Yeah. And I think, as well, when you say about these differences, sometimes, social media or even kind of programs on TV can have a negative effect. But I think this has a positive effect because there's so many programs now on Netflix and all the other channels that are they add in the LGBTQ kind of communities in there. And, I think sex education has had a big kind of impact on exploring stuff like that. So positively, we're seeing positive role models as well. So it's not some kind of seedy thing, it's actually, and like you say, with that, coupled with the education and maybe young people kind of more in contact with same-sex or whatever families, that, like you say, it does become, I guess, I wouldn't say the norm quite as yet, but there's that acceptance that is starting to come into society.
Absolutely, and I'm in a same-sex relationship with, and my partner has a daughter, and when she's 18 now, she's 19 this year, but when she was in junior school, I remember speaking to her when she came home one day, having had a lesson on diversity around relationships, and they'd covered LGBT issues in that session. I was really blown away. At such a young age, they were discussing alternative family setups, having two dads, having two mums, having one mum, having one dad. Whoever that difference looked, they were discussing it in their school environment, and that was going back, a decade ago. So, and all that's a kind of a follow-on from the repeal of Section 28, which happened in the early 2000s. That piece of legislation was around for a number of decades. It stopped people working in education from being able to openly discuss and support LGBTQ plus people because they were fearful of losing their jobs. They're fearful of being reprimanded. As soon as that went, things started to relax. It's been a slow burner in terms of change. But we're getting there, Lou. We are absolutely getting there. You've got, like you just said, year sevens coming out not in droves, but in much bigger numbers than they were maybe a decade ago. So it's a real positive thing that in school young people are feeling supported and confident enough to be able to kind of, express who they are and share their identity with people and become a part of a community that's developing at a real fast pace. It's brilliant news. Yeah. And it's really exciting to be young and LGBTQ plus these days.
It really is. And just you saying positive role models, I've got to mention RuPaul's Drag Race. I've got to mention it. I could not mention it. But, Joe and, the guys who watch RuPaul's Drag Race will know that what they've started doing is kind of, highlighting the conversations with the drag queens. And, it's not sob stories. It's talking about their journey, to being where they are today. And there's some quite raw kind of stories on there, isn't there, Joe, that obviously I won't go into on this podcast because, obviously young people will be listening to this. But, it gives you, you've got programs like that where, you might see somebody on the outside that is all kind of glitz and glamour, but there is a story where, and there's a journey to where they've got to. And I think that shines, that's a positive as well to kind of watch some of those stories. So, yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lisa. Love RuPaul's Drag Race.
Joe.
Only a slight fan of it, but I only try to watch it at least once a week.
Yeah, right.
I'm fine. 3 times maybe.
Another thing that we asked the group of young people was support. Like, how have they, where have they gone for support, and how have they managed to kind of deal with issues that might have come up? And some of the things they were saying was having somebody just to talk to. So having that safe group within school where they can be who they want to be, they can discuss what they want to discuss, is really kind of helped them. They've also mentioned Umbrella, so that is a charity that also offers support to young people from the LGBTQ plus community, so we'll tag them underneath as well on this podcast. But yeah, any other kind of tips or advice that you have that might help anybody, especially young people who might be struggling or going through, anything really in terms of who they are?
I think for me it would just obviously talk to people who you trust, and you don't have to announce it from the rooftops. It's just about maybe that one person that you can go to and just say, look, I'd like to talk to you about this, and that can be just such a weight off your shoulders. But also my advice is to tap into local groups as well. I used to, in a professional role, used to support a group in the Torvine area. And this was back, this group has been running, I'm hoping it's still running, but 18 years ago, for young people, dedicated for young people. But seek those groups out, and a lot, you'll be able to email in the first instance so you can dip your toe. These groups, they kind of very much look at safety measures, because they don't kind of tell people where these groups are meeting, so you kind of have to be in the group, and then they'll tell you where they meet either monthly or wherever. So I think just go to that person who you can trust, but also kind of maybe seek out the wider community of groups that are out there, because they're support groups, but they've also got loads of things that they do for fun, so you make lifelong friendships in those groups as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think and I'd have to echo Lisa's kind of words that contact somebody, connect with somebody that you feel you're able to share that information with. And like Lisa said, a good source of support comes from LGBTQ plus youth groups. There are a variety of them across Gwent. In every borough, there's one linked to the youth service. And it's a good way of tapping into how other people deal with being LGBTQ plus and how they share their information, asking what their strategies were, being inspired by them. Everyone has their own individual journey, and you might feel, and any of the listeners that are listening to this today might feel that they want to share their identity or who they are with people and haven't been able to. Do it when you're ready to. Yeah. Unfortunately, some people haven't got that luxury and are forced out the closet. But if you're ready to do it when you feel ready to. Do it when you feel you have enough people around you to support you. And also ask your peers who identify as LGBTQ and plus how they've coped with those kind of situations previously and what's helped them. So get support from other people.
What would be brilliant as well is in the links on the social media pages of people sharing. If anybody knows of any podcasts that would help young people, so young people who have come out and actually have got podcasts about that, please share, because we love a podcast.
I love a podcast.
You know what, you can listen to them on the go, you can listen to them if you're going to school. It might just be those few words of encouragement that you need to get you through that day. And we've all grown up admiring different role models for different reasons, and I think definitely if any of our listeners are kind of know of any of these podcasts or any other kind of maybe influencers that are reputable, of course, please put them in the link so that other people you can share that good work and positivity.
Yeah, and again, that brings me on nicely, because these links you just keep throwing at me, Liz, because LGBTQ plus History Month this month, or this year, is their theme is artists. So again, we asked the young people in school who some of the artists that they kind of look up to and are inspired by. So
ask us if we know them, Lou. Ask me and Joe if we know them.
Right, okay.
See if we're down with the kids. Are you up for this, Joe?
Let's do it.
Come on then.
Okay, so first up we have Youngblood.
Yeah, I know who the Youngblood is.
Youngblood is a
I do know that song, yeah. I do.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is quite a long list, mind.
Oh,
right, we've got Cara Delevingne,
Yeah. Bing.
Yeah.
Actor. Yeah.
Yeah. Amandla Stenberg. No. Yasmin Benoit. I hope I'm saying these right. Lady Gaga.
Yeah. Yeah. Bing.
RuPaul.
Oh, bing.
Sam Smith.
Oh, bing.
Bing. Yeah.
Elliot Page.
Oh yeah, Elliot was formerly Ellen Page.
Yeah.
Yes.
Miley Cyrus.
Oh, bing.
Yes, bing.
Demi Lovato.
Yes, bing.
Yeah. Neil Patrick Harris.
I feel like I should know that person, but I don't.
The name's familiar.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. That's a middle. That's a.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. What about Alexander Wang?
Oh. I feel like I should.
Name's familiar.
I can't say that.
We need to know these people. Though.
Oli Olo. I apologise. I can't pronounce that. Jacqueline Wilson.
Yeah, the writer.
Yeah.
Tracy Beaker.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tracy Beaker.
No, it's not Tracy Beaker. It's
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jacqueline Wilson. Oh God, I hope so.
Jamila Jamil.
Yes.
Yes.
Bing.
Yes, Bing.
Lily Reinhardt.
Yes, Bing, actor, I think.
And Nikki the Jaeger, aka Nikki Tutorials.
Oh, yeah. So, make pass, isn't it?
Oh, ding then.
I've got another one. Philip Schofield.
Bing. Yeah, we don't fail.
Bong.
Yeah, there's loads more on the loads more on the list as well. But that is a lot of famous artists. Billie Eilish was another one I think they've mentioned. So yeah, there were lots. What have you two got a favourite artist?
LGBTQ plus people in terms of right out there, I'd say one of my biggest influences was George Michael. He's dead now. He died a couple of years ago. He's really struggled with his identity and sharing that in the media because he was thrust into the media, into the spotlight at a very young age, and struggled because he was coming out in an era where he wasn't accepted. The laws around being gay and bisexual were very different in the 80s and 90s. But he embraced everything that he had to offer in terms of being different, in terms of being George Michael. And he just really impressed me at a very young age. And I was quite blown away by kind of how out there he was, because he gave a lot of strength to people. So he was one of my kind of biggest influences when I was younger.
Amazing. What about you, Lise?
Well, I haven't really, I can't think on the spot. I'll probably come off now and think, I'll be sending Lou post-it notes. But I think for me it was a television program called The L Word, because the writers of The L Word, so it was the first, I guess, program that explored exclusively, at the time, lesbian kind of issues, but the first kind of way out character was when somebody called, they were transgender. Again, the listeners are going to be shouting at this now. But yeah, that was the first way out one. But I think the writers of The L Word, it was a group of, I guess, professional women living in LA, going about their days, but it was tackling, and it still does tackle just everyday stuff that goes on. And I mean, I kind of watched, the TV programs, that were kind of introduced gay characters in, but The L Word for me was the first program that was exclusively explored women, lesbian kind of issues. But no artists as such, but I think the program for me, the writers behind that were, it was great. It is great, still great. But I can't get it because I've got no TV. So if anybody wants to give me their signed login details, then, in the chat.
Send me a message.
Yeah, send me a message.
So we've now reached the point in the podcast for my favourite part, which is get to know the worker.
Yay.
Woo, 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 woo.
Yay.
Come on, listen, I want trumpets.
Oh,
Oh, that is amazing. So it is time for Meet the Worker. So today I thought we would do weird food combinations.
okay.
So, do you have any weird food combinations?
I think I do.
Oh, yes, go on.
Yeah, peanut butter
Mhm.
and Marmite.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's a real weird, yes, that's a weird one.
That's a heavy savoury on savoury there, Joe.
Oh,
And that
layers
is
of
not
savoury.
everyone likes peanut butter or Marmite, so
No.
two together.
I have it every day for breakfast.
Do you have a claggy mouth when you talk?
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like guzzle lots of coffee after it as well.
Put it on toast.
No, only a sandwich. You can't eat it in toast because it's too claggy. I can't swallow it. I have tried it. Quite a few times I've tried to get it in there and swallow it. But it's not going anywhere. It's my mouth and it's just not moving anywhere. So a sandwich is the way forward if you're going to eat it. But do you know what? I was so excited when I saw it in the supermarkets. They had peanut butter with Marmite in there.
Yeah.
But it had dairy products in it and I couldn't eat it.
Oh.
So I
See,
couldn't
Joe,
fit, so-
I've got a challenge for you then, to do peanut butter and what is it?
Marmite.
Marmite on a Jacob's cracker. No, that is Clag City.
Oof. I'd give that a go.
Sandwiched.
And
Like it.
film it so we can
And film it without water.
Okay, I'll do what I can. How big's the Jacob's cracker? It's quite wide, isn't it? It's a square one, isn't it?
It's kind of like it's smaller than a beer mat, isn't it? Like it's like a post-it note.
I should be able to get it in my mouth, so I don't know whether I'll be able to swallow it, but I
Well, there's a world record, isn't there, for how many people can eat Jacob's crackers without having water.
Oh, really?
They're really like claggy. So you end up having a mouthful of like cement.
Yeah.
I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to post it on the stats. Yeah, I'm going to post it on the Instagram feed.
Brilliant.
Oh, there we go. We've got something to look forward to.
You're welcome.
So, Lisa, have you got any weird food combination?
I haven't really. I do like sweet and savoury together. I think that's kind of can be quite controversial. I do, like sometimes somebody will give me a funny look if I put a cheeky grape on a salad, and I don't really think that's too bad putting a grape. Although I did go to a pub once, I shall not name this pub, and they put a whacking great big pear in the middle of my salad. A pear. That was interesting. I mean, I can understand a grape or a raisin, but half a pear didn't really deserve to be there on a salad, to be fair.
No,
so
that's rude.
Is that like an American Waldorf salad or anything? I don't know. There was no walnuts, and it was just a half a pear. Yeah, and I didn't know whether I was eating my sweet or my savoury, so that was a bit strange.
Yeah, that is a bit odd.
Yeah, it wasn't my odd combination. It was somebody else's odd combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They're not too out there, are they? They're not too bad. Okay, so another question. If you could bring back one like snack or chocolate bar from your childhood, what would it be? So they like no longer do anymore.
Oh, I always remember eating one of these like cheese sandwiches with. It was like a soft cheese in the middle, and it had like a little, like a wafer on the top and the bottom, and it was round.
Was it like really artificial cheese?
Yeah, really artificial. Yeah, lots of V numbers, and it was like almost glowing orange.
Yeah.
What was that? Wasn't it Rizzler? Rizzler? No, not Rizzler. No.
It might have been Rizzler. I can't remember.
I think I remember them. The biscuit was delicious though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was glowing with E numbers, but I just couldn't eat enough of them. Like honestly, I used to get pocket money and go straight around the shop and buy a load of them and just stash them in my pockets, and that was my go-to snack. and blocks of cheese which are available anyway. But those things are not available, and I struggled to find them for years and years and years after. I think as soon as I hit my teens, a lot of these things I was eating that had lots of additives in them disappeared off the shelves. Because people became more aware of, hygiene and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And so they started to delete all of these things from the stocks, unfortunately. So maybe if anyone's listening, if anyone's interested in taking up the challenge, create one of these biscuits with this thing in the middle. I'd love to try it again.
That's brilliant. Well, you should look online. There's another challenge, Joe. Look online and see if somebody's bought a stash of them from 1980 and just thought there's going to be somebody who wants them.
Yeah, they're probably like a McDonald's. They won't even go off.
Yeah, that's funny.
They're probably fresh now.
Probably.
What would yours be, Lee?
So I haven't got one, but I think I'd rename a bar back to the original name. So I want to bring back a marathon. I don't want to go and ask for Snickers, because I remember like when it first came out and it sounded like Knickers, and it like you'd go up to the kind of counter, because I used to go to the indoor market, and we were all sniggering like, can I have a Snickers please, because it sounds like Knickers. But yeah, I would campaign to bring back marathon, and I'd like to talk to that person who decided to call it Snickers, not a marathon. I'm wondering whether, because they thought marathon sounds really healthy and somebody's, maybe running a marathon, that they shouldn't associate it with a chocolate bar. But then
maybe
Snickers,
I don't really associate it with Knickers.
Okay, it's not just me. It is not just me. Snickers, yeah.
They brought it back as marathon for a little while, didn't they?
Did they? I can't remember.
Did they? Went off, yeah.
And also, I'll go a step further then, and this is just enough from me then, is campaign to bring the correct size of bar of chocolate back to what it was in 1980.
Yeah, I'll sign that petition.
Yeah, not like when you buy a bar of chocolate and it feels like I'm a giant holding that bar of chocolate. They're too small now.
It's because they're all 30% less sugar, but what they mean by 30% less sugar is 30% less chocolate bar.
30% less girth. Let's just say that.
And on that note, thank you very, very much, Joe and Lisa. It has been a blast. It's been a really, really good episode. And thank you so, so much for being so frank and so honest and sharing your experiences. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you, Lou.
Thank you for taking the time to ask us.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. We really enjoyed it.
Bye.
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 Who's got the ice cream fan around, Dan?
Oh.
What an amazing and honest episode that was this week. Thank you so much to Joe and Lisa for being the guests for this week. We really, really appreciate your honesty and sharing your experiences with us. Tune in next month for another episode of No Filter. Until then, bye.